All right, let's get into it. Today, we're tackling two pretty fundamental concepts in JavaScript.
Yeah.
Scope and closures. Now, I gotta admit, those words, they don't exactly scream excitement, right?
Yeah.
Like, at first glance, maybe a little dry, maybe a little bit technical.
Yeah, you don't usually hear them at parties, right?
Exactly. Not exactly party conversation starters. But seriously, though, underneath, these concepts are the engine behind some of the most powerful and elegant code you can write in JavaScript. So whether you're just starting out or you've been coding for a while, this deep dive is going to be crucial for understanding how to really level up your JavaScript game.
Totally. Getting a good grasp on these, honestly, it can really transform how you approach, pretty much everything in JavaScript.
So true.
Yeah.
All right, let's start with scope. I've always loved this analogy of like rooms in a house.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic, right?
Yeah. So like, how do you see that working with scope in JavaScript?
Okay, well, picture this. Your code is a house, right? Each function is like a different room with its own specific purpose and tools. So you wouldn't really use, I don't know, a blender in the bathroom, right?
Well, unless you're making some really weird smoothies.
Right. Okay, maybe not the best example. But the point is, with function scope, variables you declare inside a function are kind of like those tools. They're generally meant to stay in that room, in that function.
They have their place.
Exactly. Now, global scope is like having the key to the front door. You can use it to access any room in the house.
Okay, I'm with you so far. Front door key, you can get anywhere. Each room has its own stuff. Now, what about block scope? Is that like a drawer inside one of those rooms?
You got it. Perfect analogy. Block scope is even more restricted. It's like, imagine a spice rack inside a cabinet. Variables declared inside curly braces, you know those, like within an if statement or a for loop?
Right.
They're only visible. They only exist inside that specific block of code.
Gotcha. So in that code example we have here, that name variable, it's declared outside of any function. So that's global.
Right. Global scope.
But greeting, that's tucked inside the greet function, so it can only be used within that function.
Yep, like that blender in the kitchen.
Exactly. And then mood, that's declared inside that if statement's curly braces, so it's even more restricted.
Super restricted. And the thing is, all of this might seem like, okay, extra rules, why? But it's about organization and predictability. Keeps things tidy. Imagine trying to debug a program where any variable could just change willy-nilly from anywhere.
Oh, man.
Right, total chaos. Scope helps prevent those accidental overwrites, makes your code much easier to understand.
And debug. So much easier to debug.
Absolutely. Less headaches for everyone.
So scope, it's about where our variables live and where they can be accessed. So how do closures fit into all of this? This is where things get a little bit more mind-bendy, right?
Mind-bendy indeed. Closures are where the real magic starts to happen. Imagine a function that can remember variables from its surrounding scope even after the outer function has finished running. That's a closure.
So they like the function's carrying a little backpack of variables with it.
They love that. Yeah, a little backpack of variables from its birthplace. It remembers them, even if its birthplace has, quote unquote, disappeared.
So in that simple counter example we have, that inner function can still access and change that count variable, even though it's being called outside of the outer function.
Exactly. You'd think it would have forgotten all about count because that outer function is gone, right?
Right. Yeah.
But closures, they hold on to that information. And it's not just about simple counters, by the way.
Oh, right.
Closures, they let you create private variables within functions. It's like, imagine a chef, right? They have their secret recipe.
Oh, I like this analogy.
Yeah, the ingredients are protected. Only their trusted sous chefs, the inner circle, can access those ingredients. And that's what private variables are like with closures.
Wow. So it's not just about keeping track of numbers. It's about, like, controlling access to information, right? What else can we do with these closures?
Okay, so imagine needing a bunch of functions that do similar things, but with slightly different settings. With closures, you can create function factories. Like, let's say you need a function that doubles a number and then another one that triples it, and so on.
Right.
Instead of writing separate functions for all of those, you can use a closure to create a factory, like in this make multiplier example. Pass in a value, and boom, it spits out a customized function.
Wow, that's a lot more efficient.
Right. You don't have to repeat yourself a million times. Super powerful.
So closures are clearly very versatile.
Yeah.
But I got to ask, how does JavaScript actually keep track of all these variables when we have all these nested functions and closures going on?
Great question. So JavaScript uses what's called a scope chain to look up variables. It starts by looking in the immediate scope, right?
Okay.
And if it can't find the variable there, it goes up to the next level, like up the chain of command all the way up to the global scope.
Okay, so it's searching, starting locally, and then going like more and more global.
Exactly. And this is where lexical scope comes in. This means JavaScript cares about where a function was defined, not just where it's called.
Okay, so even if a function's called somewhere else entirely, it still remembers the scope it was born into, right?
Exactly. Think of it like a recipe from a cookbook. The instructions come from the book, right?
Right.
Not from your kitchen where you're cooking. It's all about where those instructions originated. Lexical scope.
I love that analogy. All right, so we've talked about the power of closures. Are there, like, any potential downsides or things we should be careful about, especially with closures holding on to variables?
That's a smart question. One thing to be mindful of is the potential for memory leaks.
Okay.
So if a closure keeps a reference to a big object that's no longer needed, it can prevent JavaScript's garbage collection from, like, cleaning up,
So it's like our program starts hoarding digital junk it doesn't need.
basically. And over time, that can affect performance. So, closures are super powerful, but use them responsibly. Make sure they're not holding on to things for no reason.
So it's something to be aware of.
Definitely. It becomes more intuitive as you get comfortable with closures, knowing when to be extra careful about what they're holding on to.
Perfect. So just to recap, scope is all about where variables live and can be accessed, and closures are these awesome little functions that carry a backpack of variables from their original scope.
It's true. They're like little time capsules, remembering where they came from.
Yeah. And together, these concepts, they really unlock a lot of powerful and elegant programming techniques in JavaScript.
Right. If you think about it, functions are like little machines in JavaScript. Closures give you this fine-grained control over their inner workings. It's amazing what you can build when you master these concepts.
It really makes you wonder what kind of incredible, complex programs are possible once you fully grasp these concepts. Like, what doors do they open?
The possibilities are huge.
Absolutely huge. And speaking of exciting possibilities, on our next deep dive, we're going to be exploring asynchronous programming.
Oh, yeah, that's a fun one.
Promises, callbacks, all the ways to keep JavaScript running smoothly, even when it's dealing with things that take time.
We'll unravel those mysteries, get you comfortable with all the tools for working with time in JavaScript.
Can't wait. See y'all next time.